Hi and welcome to The Party Line. This podcast is being recorded on Indigenous land. We stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters in their struggles against racism and capitalism.
Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.
Well, welcome to episode 16 of The Party Line.
16.
Mm-hmm.
It's been going a while.
Is that some sort of anniversary?
No.
Don't think so.
So you're here with Annika, Jordan. He's just taking a sip of the coffee, which Omar kindly got for us because Omar, what day is it today?
Thursday.
Yeah, it's Thursday today. We get a message from Omar at like 9 a.m. saying, "Oh, I'm running late," which is a pretty classic text from Omar, except it came on the wrong day.
So I was actually really early.
He was really early.
Which is, really positive.
So-
About 24 hours early.
As a form of apology, he got us coffee this morning. But he also has scheduled a dentist appointment for the time that we record the podcast as well. So,
Just another day in the life. I feel vindicated in my ADHD-dom.
okay, vindicated.
Yeah.
Vindicated late and
Yeah, I don't think you've
overscheduled.
vindicated.
All right, moving on.
But we actually do have a lot to talk about this morning because it's morning for us. Don't know when you're listening. But a lot has happened in the world. So this is our first episode for 2026.
Yeah, I think so.
In the middle of a heat wave.
Yeah.
In the middle of a heat wave.
You know it's a really bad heat wave when you wake up, you look at the weather and it says 34 and you're like, yes, cool day.
Yeah,
Can
not as
go
bad
outside.
as yesterday.
Yeah.
And Geordie's actually wearing shorts today, which indicates
Yeah.
the level of the heat wave as well.
Yeah, for a Melbourne hipster, shorts.
Yeah,
are
it's
good.
bad.
Yeah.
I hate shorts. Just not you.
Speaking of Melbourne hipsters, they did a like sort of composite coming together of some 2,300-year-old Scythian people. And we'll put it up on the YouTube, but they just look like an average Brunswick rave couple.
I thought that was a AI generated the average Melbourne person, the average Melbourne man.
Cool.
Like,
See, fashion is really cyclical.
It makes like people from 2,000 years ago sort of more relatable.
Yeah.
Like they literally look like they could just be down at the Green Refectory getting coffee with us.
totally. That's awesome.
So I feel connected to our past.
That's nice, yeah.
But yes, 2026, a lot's happened.
Happens every year around this time.
Yeah.
I swear to God, it's like the psychopaths of this world know that no one's paying attention. So this is the time of year to do crazy shit.
Yeah. Why can't they? Well, I mean, they have holidays the rest of the year, I guess, but
Their life is one big holiday.
yeah.
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 So we want to talk about, as much as we can fit in the episode this week, the sort of ongoing campaign by the Australian ruling class, political class, politicians, their ongoing campaign against civil liberties in the Palestine movement, America's brutal imperial attack on Venezuela.
Smash and grab.
And then also the quite incredible movement that is taking place in Iran at the moment. We're going to be joined by a special guest, Bella Beiraghi, who's an Australian Iranian socialist. She's going to come on and sort of talk to us about what's going on there. So, sort of strap in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bondi thing is just mental. Like,
It
it
is
just
crazy.
goes on and on and on. I scan the Age and every morning and it's tough. It's tough at the best of times. But at the moment, there's just like a barrage every day. There was like 7 articles today. There was 8 on Monday. I think 3 or 4 yesterday. Just every day, this barrage of like grassroots community groups standing up for a royal commission. And by the time you're listening to this, probably Albo's already backflipped and decided to do it, which will be shameful. But, this like sports stars have come out for a royal commission. And like, look, athletes can be good at stuff. But one thing they're not good at is like managing society, fighting racism. Like, didn't see very many of them stand up against the war on Gaza. Dawn Fraser's come out and said she's passionately against anti-Jewish racism.
Yeah.
And in her press conference, she prefaces it all by saying, look, I've been called a racist my whole life. But this is the worst I've ever seen, And like, just to be clear, it's absolutely true. She told Nick Kyrgios to love it or leave it.
Yeah.
In 2020. In 2007, she praised Pauline Hanson.
Yeah, she literally said, like, I wish that I could be as outspoken as Pauline Hanson and say I'm sick of these immigrants coming into my country.
Exactly.
So she's
Yeah.
really got a lot to add.
And then like Kyle Sanderland's doing like an anti-racist advert because his brand is just like inclusivity.
Exactly. Like not racism.
Yeah, just like looking after the underdog. That's what Kyle Sanderland's
like this
is all
ad
about.
comes onto the TV when I'm watching the cricket. Yeah, that's just like stand up to hate.
Yeah.
Nova Paris.
Yeah, and
Kyle
then just
Sanderland.
this misogynistic pig. Like we should stop
what
this.
What did Nova Paris say about Muslims?
Eddie Maguire was in the bloody video.
Yeah.
This is the guy
Yeah,
that called Adam Goodes like King Kong.
King Kong.
Like,
Yeah.
honestly, it is just really just a bit of a, a slap in the face. Like all of these figures from the right, like Janet Albertson, she used to be the director of the IPA, columnist for The Australian. She has written 11 articles since the Bondi massacre attacking Labor and calling for a Royal Commission. That's like more than 2 a week. Like she's just pumping it out. And she actually, in 2001, wrote an article claiming that there was scientific evidence that raping women was a rite of passage for Muslim men in France.
Far out.
Like, this is the politics of these people, and they think that they're the ones that can just come out and spend 3 weeks now, 4 weeks now, saying, oh, we're the ones that know everything about racism. You need to have an anti-Semitism inquiry. And then, of course, there was Susan Lay's thing this week where when she was doing another press conference about the need for a Royal Commission, saying that they need to look into far-left neo-Nazism.
Yeah, the left-wing neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
I mean, that really revealed what these people are about. And it's the same with Gillian Segal and the ECAJ and all that. Like, they don't give a shit about the neo-Nazis, the far right. They just want to target the Palestine movement, the left. And she sort of tried to correct herself subsequently. But, yeah, I mean, it's just like a Freudian slip, She and her party want to be targeting the movement and the left who they know are behind the movement. They're not interested in dealing with the NSN. Gillian Segal didn't come out and condemn the protest outside the front of Parliament. The head of ECAJ actually defended. Do people remember Elon Musk's Nazi salute?
Yeah.
At that, what was it?
It was a Trump rally. I think it was one of the CPAC, was it, or something? Probably.
Anyway, he did a fucking Nazi salute twice.
Yeah.
And then the head of the Executive Council of Australian Jewellery says, nah, he was in a passionate moment.
Yeah.
He was just over-enthusiastic.
It's just excited.
Yeah.
It's just a normal reaction when you're excited.
Exactly. And it's not an accident. It's because these right-wing pro-Israel organisations know that the far right are their allies. And they don't give a shit about anti-Semitism in any serious way. Another group of people who've been coming out in support of a Royal Commission, really passionate stand up against racism, is the Banking Association, the Minerals Council of Australia, the Institute of Company Directors, the Australian Industry Group, the Retailers Association, the Business Council, the Master Builders, great people. These people are all coming out passionately against racism and for an inquiry into anti-Semitism. It really warms the heart,
My favourite of that category was the chair of BHP, Australia's biggest mining company.
Stop it.
What did they say?
Oh, you just signed the letter, there really needs to be a Royal Commission. But then, you like sort of think about, wait, what is BHP? Yeah, it's Australia's biggest mining company, trashes Indigenous sacred sites, is responsible for a mine collapse in Brazil that led to the death of 20 people, made entire tracts of land uninhabitable. But yeah, they have a lot to tell us. And then there was Jeff Wilson, who is the chair of like a major finance company, Wilson Asset Management. And he said that the National Commission was an economic and institutional priority.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've seen the Susan Lay already coming out to like limit the terms of reference of the like the thing that doesn't exist yet, to say we should only focus on, what is it, Islamic hate. And
anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
So we're not interested in
anti-trans or like any of that. Like, it's just like Albo said no, and then obviously he's going to capitulate and say yes. But like, I worked for a Royal Commission for the Defence and Veteran Suicide one. These things do nothing. Like, we've had so many parliamentary inquiries on particularly defence and veteran suicide. Like, the first thing I did when I did that job was go in and analyse how many of these have we done before, how many recommendations have we done on this topic, and what's been done since then. And the answer was, heaps, nothing. We'll have another one though. They do nothing. Ordinary people do not give a shit about them. But like, yeah, you can tell that something is happening based on who's, behind all the calls, all these like grassroots groups. And then like you can see the media being like, Aussies want this or whatever. It's like,
it's a broad movement.
Yeah.
Albertson thing was we need a fair dinkum. Albo call a fair dinkum Royal Commission.
We've got to make this relatable.
Not one
somehow.
of those like foreign Royal Commissions.
Just a fair dinkum one.
Dinkum Die Aussie Royal Commission.
I think it's Dinky Die.
That's it.
Dinkum. But yeah, it is like, because I have seen the question asked a bit around the traps, like on like social media and stuff like that. Like, why is the campaign for the Royal Commission the big thing that the right are pushing? Because it does seem a bit confusing, because we know from experience, like Geordie said, the Royal Commission's like, you think about the Royal Commission to Indigenous deaths in custody, like they refuse to implement the findings and the recommendations from that Royal Commission. We talked about like last year, 2025 was one of the biggest years for Indigenous death in custody since the 70s. So, the sort of normal feeling from left-wing people about Royal Commissions is, well, they should find the truth and then they should do something about it. But so how does this sort of play into a right-wing sort of campaign? And I think one of the things about it is that there's a real push from like Australian sort of ruling class society, and by that I mean, all these people who have come out and signed it. So we've talked about the sort of all of the economic business leaders, the media, university vice chancellors, etc. They have been campaigning for this because they want to be able to extend this political issue as far as it can go. The terms of referencing that you raised, Jordan, they want to have a big fight about it. There's Janet Albertson's 3 more articles for her, another 5 for the rest of the commentators in The Australian, etc. And sort of push an argument that things have gone too far in Australian society. There's been too many protests on the streets. This Palestine issue's gotten out of hand. And then also the Labor Party seems too comfortable in power. Yeah. So they need to do something to put a bit of a notch, into this, whatever the metaphor is. Clip the wings, of the Labor Party. So it's not about the Royal Commission in terms of like, this is going to be a really like effective thing that means something happens. It's a political campaign that's taking place.
Totally. And it's basically like the House of Un-Australian Activities Commission. That's what it's going to be. It's going to be right-wing scumbag after right-wing scumbag getting up and saying, I went to university and I saw a Palestine flag and there were people camping against a war and that made me feel really sad and that's got to be stopped. Yeah. And I was walking down the streets of Melbourne and I saw a Palestine rally and I couldn't go to my favourite restaurant and that's got to be stopped, It's going to be months of that. Yeah. And so I think seeing it as a political witch trial of the Palestine movement, that's what the right want. Yeah. And that's why they don't want it to be about the security agencies. They don't want it to be about right-wing politics in general. They
or
just
about
want
Islamophobia.
They just want it to be about anti-Semitism and in particular the attack. Because their argument is, and it's been accepted widely by the media and all these scum, including the ALP, that the Palestine movement is responsible somehow for this. And so the Palestine movement is, just by definition, among the ruling class, implicated in this massacre, which it shouldn't be, and it isn't, but it is, according to them. And so they want to investigate that, but not any of the other things. Yeah. Which is why the left have to absolutely oppose the Royal Commission. And it's been pretty disappointing to see quite a range of people coming out and backing it, like David Pocock. I mean, who would expect much of him? The fucking Teals are all backing it. Even Lydia Thorpe, which is very disappointing, has come out and backed it, even though she said, we should have different terms of reference. It's just naive. the terms of
we're
reference
not going to get them.
are not going to be set by
Yeah,
the left.
totally.
They're going to be set by the
They're
far
already
right.
bloody complaining. Like there's this lawyer, whatever, who's been slated for the potential kind of person who's going to lead.
Judge, former High Court
former
judge.
High Court judge.
Extremist, radical.
Yeah. They're like, she's like, literally, they said that she's too progressive, too left leaning. And so that means like they're literally saying we need the most right wing judge to be the person who runs the
like the commissioners and then the chief commissioner, they're all political appointments. Like they're all like former staffers, they're all former judges, they're all former mates of these people. So it's like, yeah, it'll create a few jobs for mates, literally. But like even if it was like, you know, had the most perfect terms of reference and whatever, the recommendations that they write, and like I drafted some of them before, it's like, oh, that's not going to be palatable for the government, so we'll have to moderate that recommendation. And it's like, we already have the wish list of, you know, the anti-Semitism envoy. The recommendations are just going to be the same as that report.
Or more.
Exactly.
They might come up with new ones.
Totally.
Which is, I think...
Yeah.
I think understanding this is a different Royal Commission to the other ones, because this is not one that's like...
this is purely political.
Yeah, this is not addressing... Because usually Royal Commissions are a way to kick the can down the road.
Totally.
You know? Like, we don't want to talk about this.
We can pay some lip service over
Exactly.
here.
Whereas this is like, the government's been pressured by the right.
Yeah.
They've been pressured to do it. They're probably going to do it. Then they'll be pressured about the terms of reference. Then they'll be pressured about who's running it. Then there's going to be this whole witch trial. And the idea they're going to do all that and it's going to be front page media for months and then they're just going to bury it, I think is not realistic. So this is setting up like a multiple month campaign by the right wing. And I don't mean like the Hansons of this world, because she's been totally sidelined. It's like the media, the Murdoch press, but not only them, the Nine News Empire, etc. They're going to be campaigning about why banning protests, you know, curtailing free speech is really necessary.
Yeah.
And universities should be turned even more into fascist sort of training grounds, and no one's allowed to think anything alternative. And they will act on. I think they will act on those outcomes. I don't think it's going to be, you know, bullshit. So that's why we have to oppose it now, and we're going to have to sort of think about how we can intervene into it and try and make an argument against the bullshit they're going to be spewing.
Yeah, and like in the meantime, while all of this kind of bullshit goes on, like people are getting harassed in the street, like people in headscarves, people in burqas and shit like that. Like there's bad stuff happening, and there's, you know, the right is all just like, well, can I get a few more articles going about this? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think that like the point that Omar's making is like really important, because it is a thing that we started with. Like, it's been the holidays, people have been, you know, camping, no reception, whatever. Like, you do just have to get a sense of the fucking scale of this. Like Omar's talked about how many articles are written in The Age. If you go on Sky News, like, it's just non-stop.
Yeah, it's all it is.
Is there anything else happening in the world?
Like, they don't even, like, Venezuela was, like, irrelevant for them because they've got a campaign.
We'll interrupt this.
And then, like, what it's doing as well is, like, because there's the Royal Commission and the sort of impact that that's going to have. Then there's also the curtailing of civil rights and civil liberties. So, as predicted, the New South Wales Police have extended the no protest designation for another fortnight in New South Wales. A woman was arrested at the Venezuela rally in New South Wales in Sydney for wearing a shirt that said "Globalise the Intifada." So that's all taking place. But then also it's just meaning that all of these racist, Islamophobic freaks and creeps are having their moment to come out of the woodworks and press the advantage and push more racist ideas in society. So Andrew Hastie, who last year resigned from the front bench to join the back bench so that he could run his own political campaigns and build his political profile in the Liberal Party, launched a crowdfunder at the end of last year, and like in the space of like a couple of days, I think it was, raised $260,000 so that he could run an anti-immigration campaign. And Jacinta Price and Advance have also done the same thing. So hundreds of thousands of dollars being funneled into right-wing political forces so that they can run campaigns against Muslims, migrants, refugees, black and brown people, the whole gamut.
Yeah, it's a really aggressive time. Like, and it's really important to understand it's not just the Murdoch press, because we expect them. That's like the Fox News of Australia. Like, they're mental. But it's all the other ones. I saw this editorial from the Canberra Times. I just want to read it out. Many Australians would love to see the professional rabble rousers who've done so much to stir up ancient hatreds and undermine social cohesion, summoned to undergo forensic questioning by a special counsel under the threat of tough penalties for perjury and contempt. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide.
Oh my God.
Firstly, the ancient hatreds, which he's talking about, anti-Semitism, they're talking about anti-Semitism, that's like a European thing. You know, it's not the Palestine movement. It's like a right wing of Europe thing. Like Hitler was not on the left.
Yeah.
You know, all the anti-Semitic pogroms and stuff in Tsarist Russia. This was all the far right, you know, and the right wing and the establishment. It was nothing to do with the socialist movement.
Also, what would they ask? What would they ask?
Exactly.
These organizers?
Ask us anything. We would love to be there.
Like,
put us in the media now. Like, these people ignore us. They never want to hear from us.
Put me on the dock.
Yeah, that's right. We will find a way in there if they fucking do this witch hunt. We will voluntarily put ourselves forward for the House of Un-Australian Activity.
Like, they're clearly saying, like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah,
it
is.
would be us.
Jordan.
Yeah. Let's
Get up to Canberra right
like,
now.
let's go. But they're gonna ask, like, did you see a flag there or whatever?
Yeah.
It's like, what did you do about it?
Yeah.
Like, fucking Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, and notably, like, the editorial doesn't mention, like, the war, the genocide.
Yeah.
71,000 people killed. No, of course. We were just protesting because we didn't like Jews. Like, Like,
fucking
this is
Jesus.
ridiculous. It's actually disgusting. So, yeah, we would love to have our day in court and respond to this bullshit. But, of course, if we do get a chance, they won't report it. It'll be buried on page 12.
Yeah.
While, you know, the feelings of some wealthy pro-Israel scumbag who felt sad when they saw a camp
All over
against
the
the
news.
war will be, like, front page. So I think it's really important. And, yeah, like the rally in Melbourne, I know there are rallies planned interstate as well, is going to be really decisive in pushing back on this. I know the National Palestine Movement's having a meeting on Friday, and there's a broad consensus emerging that we want to protest the visit of Isaac Herzog, the Israeli president, who's overseen the genocide, who, you know, is famously pictured signing missiles, raining down on Gazan people, who said there's no innocent civilians in Gaza. The whole nation is to blame for what happened on October 7. You know, this is a guy whose comments were actually central to the ICC case, which plausibly found Israel as committing a genocide. So he's been invited by the government, and so his visit is going to be a focus for protests all around Australia. And 9 Jewish organisations have already come out and said this visit should not happen. The guy's a war criminal. Even parts of the Labor Party have tepidly come out and said if he does come, he should be investigated for war crimes. You know, any bit of pressure is to be welcomed at this point because this is such a disgusting move. And actually, again, linking Israel to this crime will only the Bondi massacre will only further confuse the issue and actually make people care less about Bondi, because a lot of people care about Gaza. Our argument is we should care about both, but the government is saying you can't care about both. You can only care about one. Which is disgusting. And Israel says the same thing. Because why are we only allowed to mourn 15 dead bodies in Bondi and not the 71,000 dead bodies in Gaza?
And I mean, that's a really important point, which is that any discussion of what's happening in Palestine, what's happening in Gaza has just been totally buried, totally taken out of the public discussion. When was the last time you saw a headline on the ABC about, you know, what's happening there? And what's happening in Palestine now is like just absolutely heartbreaking and enraging. The Israeli government has just approved a massive building of settlements in the West Bank, one of the biggest land grabs that's happened in a long time. There was a story about a young Palestinian child who drowned in a tent in Gaza because there's been massive floods that have been going through. Starvation continues. The government in Israel has banned aid organisations such as, you know, Doctors Without Borders from being able to go into Palestine.
I mean, what kind of, like, where you are at when you're banning an organisation
you're not the
called
good guys.
Doctors Without Borders?
Exactly.
Like, what, you know, when you were a child, did you wake up in the morning and think, oh, one day I want to ban
fuck
Doctors
these
Without
people.
Borders? Like,
Yeah, 30, like it's 30 groups as well. It's like not just them. It's just like that's the one that everyone knows. It's like, Jesus Christ.
And then, like we talked about it last week, but it bears sort of repeating. Like what's happening in Australia right now, we talked about it. It's we're at a sort of more backward stage in comparison to the rest of the world. Like UK as an example of what can happen when civil liberties are stripped away from you, when words are banned, etc. And the hunger strikers, the young Palestinian pro-Palestine activists in the UK are approaching really critical, like the critical number of days since they began their hunger strike, could die in the next week. And yeah, the thing that the Australian media class, politicians, commentators, etc., think is really, really important to do is actually get us further along that path. So yeah, I think Omar's right. Like everybody needs to get to the protest on the 11th in Melbourne and other protests around the country, because we need to stand up against what's going on.
Totally. I mean, a woman in Sydney was already arrested for wearing
Yeah.
the Intifada top.
Yeah, I just said that.
Yeah, we said that before. That's quite funny though, because it's like no one's really been chanting that ever.
No.
Yeah.
And then now that they're like, that's illegal, it's like, all right.
Yeah, Josh Lees from Palestine Action Group Sydney.
Yep.
He made the point in that press conference that he and other Palestine activists did in Sydney, where they said they wanted to challenge the Min's laws. He was like, Chris Min's like, you're just popularising a slogan.
Yeah,
that's
totally.
Never been.
That's also really hard to chant and stuff.
And for that comment, Chris Minns was like, that's a troll-like response. Like, real personal animosity developing between Josh Lees and Chris Minns.
I mean, Josh runs the state, and Minns is meant to, so...
But it's like, you
Maybe
know,
we should have Josh back on the pod.
bring Josh back on. Drop a comment if you want Josh back on the podcast. But no, it's like, it is the thing though. It's like, because we have been talking a lot about the right wing press, the right wing commentator, but in New South Wales, it's the Labor Party that are the ones that are driving this attack. Like they're the ones who are pushing on the front foot. They have, already started their own version of a New South Wales version of a Royal Commission,
and they've requested a federal one as well.
And and that's right. Like there's figures inside the Labor Party who are, writing these open letters, Friends of Israel, Labor, who have come out pressuring Albanese for the Royal Commission. So we can't just sort of see this as like purely a right spectrum sort of attack. Like what we've been saying, this is a whole of sort of, ruling class society pressure point. And whilst this is primarily from the perspective of the ruling class, an attempt to attack the Labor Party, there's multiple sections within Labor who are very happy to see this this campaign be ran, and they want to participate in it. I thought the Kathy Wilcox cartoon in The Age the other day was hit the nail on the head. Labor has-beens for a Royal Commission alongside Business Society, A Dog with a Bone.
Yeah. Alan Tudge.
Alan Tudge.
Oh
my God.
He's come back to life. I mean, this is a guy who was literally done... Was it a Royal Commission into Robert, or was it something else? There was an investigation, some sort of official investigation.
Yeah, no, there was a Royal Commission.
There was a Royal Commission,
and there's also a NAC investigation.
Yeah,
there wasn't a NAC investigation. That was the scandal. Like, they decided not to investigate it.
Okay, so anyway, this guy was investigated and found guilty of doing all this atrocious shit.
And also being a massive sexist.
And everything. I mean, he's a creep, exponential creep. And then he comes out and joins this campaign. And you found this article, Annika. I thought it was
Which is insane. This article is insane.
Australia must learn from the United Arab Emirates. Zero tolerance for extremism.
Yes, this is written by Alan Tudge. It's incredible. I'll read a bit of it because it was just awesome. It was, the UAE recognised early that tolerating extremist ideology, even in isolated pockets or under the banner of free protest, exacts a devastating toll on society.
So to be clear, you cannot protest in the UAE. It's illegal. Yeah. You cannot have a union. You cannot vote. There is no free press.
The Human Rights Watch, because when I was reading this article, I was like, I'm fairly sure the UAE is really, really bad.
Yes, it is. I can tell you, it's really bad.
And yeah, so it's like there's like multiple activists and dissidents just detained in prisons for just protesting, like the abuse of migrants.
Yeah, they're all the workers.
They're like slave labor in the UAE, and Alan Tudge is like shining example.
I mean, that's true. That's what the Liberals and the bosses
That's what they want.
They would love a society just like the UAE. But I mean, like, seriously, the UAE is not even a country. It's just like a bank
Yeah.
in a desert.
Yeah,
Like, and with a tourism like side hustle.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually incredible.
totally. With slaves as well.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the vision of a society that the right want.
Well,
the article was insane.
It's
like
so
just
good.
reading it, and it's like, what sets the UAE apart is its uncompromising clarity. Like, this is a country with actual slaves, like monitors every single citizen's like internet use.
It's a
and
theocracy dictatorship.
Totally.
Like,
Has separate legal systems based on whether you're a citizen or not. Like,
but it's a shining example of what society
totally.
should look like.
Yeah, uncompromising.
Yeah, so maybe we were wrong about our prediction of they want us to be like the UK. Turns out they actually want us to be the UAE.
or maybe Saudi Arabia next, yeah.
Riding out the party line.
Well, a bit of an insight into my life. I was sitting around my dining room table with a few friends, and we were playing a game called the Baker Street Irregulars. It's a Sherlock Holmes investigative game. Where you have
I actually got that from my cousins in Lebanon.
It's really good. But then a news alert came up on the phone, and it was like, America has bombed Venezuela. And that kind of became a bit more important than the, the video
The
game.
whodunit.
We knew who'd done it. It was
Yeah.
Trump with a F-35 fighter jet.
Quite a few of them, actually.
Yeah, stealth bombers. But
Helicopters. I mean, honestly, the helicopters in Latin America flying over the tops of cities is like a bad
Totally.
motif.
Yeah.
It's been reprised. Yeah.
Definitely. So yeah, it's just like this kind of rebirth of naked, brutal American imperialism. And yeah, they literally kidnapped the sitting president of a foreign nation or whatever.
Yeah.
And the sort of huffing and puffing from the American politicians in the sort of immediate aftermath has just been incredible. This is Hegseth.
Justice all on full display in the middle of the night. Nicolas Maduro had his chance, just like Iran had their chance, until they didn't and until he didn't. He effed around and he found out.
He effed around and he found out. Like, what a good kind of like just insight into the kind of like meme-fied, bullish brains of the Trump regime.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of gloves off, mask off, like we're in it to win it kind of thing with the Trump administration, which is funny because there was a section of the right and also an old part of the left who actually supported Trump both against Clinton and Biden as sort of an isolationist anti-war candidate.
Yeah.
And that was always totally stupid. And this has really been clarified now that the imperialism is a bipartisan game in America, and it's just a matter of tactics. Biden's got let Israel do the genocide, but broadly we're like more the friendly face, and then Trump's just like, nah, gunboat diplomacy, we'll take what we want. Thank you very much. If you fuck around, we'll get you.
Yeah, there was the what was it? The new American Communist Party, whatever it is, that came out in support of Trump during the election as the it's like a nationalist kind of communist party.
Sounds really significant.
It's really incredible. And they're like, he's going to stop, U.S. imperialism and whatever. It's
Well, the late John Pillager had the same attitude. He wasn't alive for the last election, but the first one, he supported Trump over Clinton. And I think the guy who did the Edward Snowden movie, what's his name?
Oliver Stone. No.
The
Anyways.
journalist. Anyway, it doesn't matter. His name will come to me.
But then, it's sort of like Trump's been really sort of putting forward what his position on all of this is.
The next question is who's in charge of Venezuela right now? Have you spoken to the newly sworn in president there, Rodriguez? And what are your thoughts on the entire situation? You said the U.S. would run Venezuela.
We're dealing with the people. We're dealing with the people that just got sworn in. And don't ask me who's in charge because I'll give you an answer and it'll be very controversial.
What does that mean?
It means we're in charge.
So we're in charge, says Trump.
Yeah. Because if people don't know what's happened, they've been bombing ships and seizing, like oil tankers and stuff for a bit. And we spoke about that in previous episodes. But yeah, a couple of days ago, they effectively bombed the mainland, went in, kidnapped Maduro and his wife under, what was it, like narco-terrorism charges or something like that.
And having machine guns.
And yeah, exactly. And those are the charges before him. But, Trump has been coming out and making all these statements which are refreshingly honest from a world leader about how, this is about their oil. We want their oil.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what's happened. I just wanted to give a bit of context there in case people hadn't, probably people who listen to this podcast are aware.
Yeah. But I mean, the Americans have a long history in Latin America. I shouldn't say the Americans. That's one of the oppressions of Latin America. The US has a long history of imperialism. I mean, I think there's been something like 40 interventions since the 1890s. It's considered the American backyard. Like they control it. They've said it explicitly. That's what the whole Monroe Doctrine is. It's like, this is our part of the world. No one gets involved here.
This is their hemisphere.
Yeah, that's right. And then the Roosevelt corollary, which was the first Roosevelt, there's been many. That was like, well, not only is this our backyard, but we will intervene in countries if their interests don't suit us. And I'm not sure if he coined the term, but he's one of the most famous uses of the term, like America is the world's police. He was like, we will act as a police force in the region. And now Trump's got his own version.
Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine.
I mean, I don't know if people saw. I think I put it in the show notes. We'll put it on the screen. Like, there was this cartoon that the Department of War put up, which was like
Department of War. Now you're getting sucked in.
Yeah. That's what it's. I mean, that's honest. It's more truth. It was like Donald Trump striding the Latin American thing, Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very explicit about it.
Totally.
I mean, and one of the funny things is we were all primed to be like, oh, they're going to justify this about democracy.
Yeah.
That's not really what happened.
Yeah.
It's the oil.
They didn't bother.
Yeah.
It's about the oil. This is Trump in that press conference.
You referenced boots on the ground earlier. Can you just sort of button this up? Do you envision the U.S. military having a presence in Venezuela as the U.S. runs that country?
Well, no, we're going to have a presence in Venezuela as it pertains to oil, because we have to have, we're sending our expertise in. So you may need something, not very much. But no, we're going to be taking out a tremendous amount of wealth out of the ground. And that wealth is...
Tremendous amount of wealth.
And one of the stories that's come out in the aftermath was that Trump had actually been communicating with the oil companies prior to going into Venezuela.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
They were briefed before the war.
Yeah. And before, obviously, the Congress giving permission to go to war is like, who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
But it is pretty incredible that it's like Chevron was briefed, but Hakeem Jeffries wasn't.
And also, because they leaked the plans to 2 media outlets, and then they chose not to report it.
And then it was New York Times and I think maybe Washington Post or something like that.
Responsible imperialist publications.
The fuck was that?
No idea.
That was probably like the NSA.
But yeah, it's like when the bombing started in Caracas, the New York Times is like, reportedly bombing has happened. It's like, the bombing's happened.
Yeah, they told you. And and then the picture of them in the Situation Room or whatever, but like you spoke about, like their bullish attitude. Like it's just them with Pete on his laptop with X, like Twitter, with the word Venezuela in the search bar, like waiting to see whether or not those 2 outlets have reported his fucking thing yet.
So it's like imperialism as a PR campaign.
Totally.
Basically. The whole thing is so... They're so social media orientated. But I mean, like the oil thing's become really common. And obviously Trump is an absolute moron. He's very transparent. But like when you dig a bit deeper, it's not really just about the oil and a lot of bullshit. Like the reserves that Venezuela has are very low quality. They're like the profitability on those reserves only works if the oil price is like substantially higher than it is now, which is not in America's interest. So, and investing the amount of money required to get that oil requires, I saw an estimate like $110 billion of investment or something. Like the idea that American capitalists are going to do that into a country that's as sort of unstable and, problematic from their perspective as Venezuela. Like, I don't think that's the most likely outcome. Like, I do think they want to control the oil, and make it harder for China to get oil. But this oil was only like 4% of China's annual imports. So I think some of that narrative is a bit overdone. It is relevant, but it's overdone. The bigger thing is they want to control the whole region. And this is just like a shot over the bows of every other country that thinks they can be independent, have their own opinions, do their own thing.
Including Greenland.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
America will tell you what to think and how to act and where to give your resources. And if you don't like it, well, you will get found out, you know. And I think that's the more fundamental thing that's going on here.
Yeah,
Totally.
and Geordie mentioned Greenland, which you can talk about in a second, but like the other sort of places that are on the agenda for Trump are Cuba, Colombia. They've already, so that you can see how in Latin America they've got sort of two approaches. One is the Argentina and Malay approach, where they find, you know, a right-wing political
Honduras,
leader, and, you know, make sure that they're allied with them, doing the things that they want. You know, Trump put in a huge amount of money into Argentina to ensure that Malay got re-elected. And then on the other sort of side of the equation is brute force. And either way, they're going to get what they want. But yeah, you were saying about Greenland.
Oh yeah, just that, like Trump's being cagey about whether or not he's going to invade Greenland. Like beautiful.
I think it's pretty much, I would bet on it.
Yeah, like Stephen Miller is like, well, who the fuck is Denmark to say what they're going to, you know, what's their territorial claim? And yeah, they're really, really pushing for it.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the real things in the aftermath is like how every single European government has basically said, fine. Kidnap a leader from their home in a foreign country. That's totally reasonable.
The Keir Starmer tweet. Oh my God. He's just like, we celebrate the fall of the Maduro regime.
Yeah, Macron's been similar. Like they're just all, and again, it just reinforces there was never such thing as international law. It was always bullshit. But now we're in an era where even the charade of some sort of rules-based order has been discarded. And on one level, it doesn't change very much, but on the other level, it does mean that aggressive actions like this are more likely. And because everyone just sees now, okay, well, we can do what we like. Israel does what it likes. Russia's doing what it likes in Ukraine. America's doing what it likes. Okay, this is just the way the world is now. Gaza is just a taste.
Yeah. You know? And we spoke about this on a previous podcast, but they told us that they were going to do this when they published their, you know, national security strategy. That was like, you know, we're going to abandon our non-interventionist approach, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, our hemisphere, particularly when it relates to essential resources that we need, i.e. oil and gas and whatever. And yeah, they told us they were going to do it. Another like side note that I thought was really interesting about the rules-based order stuff that we've just like now completely abandoned was Jeff Sparrow tweeted that like he was like, this is kind of irrelevant to the, you know, the kidnapping of Maduro and his wife or anything. But all of this stuff about our climate agreements is kind of crumbling around us because like literally what's the point?
I mean, they were never worth the paper they were.
Totally. Yeah, we knew that.
Those agreements.
But now it's just like, there we go.
Yeah.
And then one of the sort of things that's kind of, you know, worth thinking about and talking about coming out of all of this, because obviously we oppose American intervention, the sort of attempts to shore up their power and control in the Western Hemisphere is going to bring nothing but, you know, terror for ordinary people, you know, get us further down the path of, you know, a confrontation a la World War III or something like this. And the people of Venezuela have the right to decide what happens to them, not fucking Hegseth Rubio and Donald Trump. But it is like the Maduro government is, because there's been a lot of discussion about like, you know, they're destroying a socialist government. You know, this is one of the other sort of explanations that people give aside from oil or imperialism is like, you know, it's an ideological attack against a socialist government. But we have to be pretty honest. Like the Maduro government is very, very far from a socialist government. It's a government that has pushed austerity, that has locked up trade union leaders, that has banned left-wing parties from running in the elections. You're not allowed to strike, exactly. The sort of like cost of living has increased. Like people live in abject poverty. This is not a government to be defended as some picture of socialist utopia.
Totally, and we don't. And like every time we talk about Venezuela, we get people in our comments and in our like DMs and stuff that's like we're out there being like, we should oppose US imperialism wherever it rears its ugly head. And then people are saying like, yeah, but you don't have to like stop defending Maduro or whatever. We don't do that. We've never done that. Like, sure, we don't think he should be kidnapped. Yeah. But like, yeah, I think it's important that we know that it's not like we're not defending this government.
That's right. And it's like, you don't have to. Like, for some people on the left, when America was invading Iraq, they felt the need to say Saddam's actually a really great guy. He's doing all these great things. No. You can oppose imperialism without saying their targets are actually really good people and should be defended in their own right. And that's especially the case in this situation, where Maduro has been a totally counter-revolutionary, actually he's been negotiating. It's all come out now. He's been talking with the West for months, trying to organize an escape plan for himself on the basis of, look, you can have all the oil. Yeah, we'll privatize everything. Yeah, whatever. We don't care about anything like that. But, just let me be. And the Americans, they didn't accept that for whatever reason. So this is not some principled anti-imperialist. This is just a rich guy living in a mansion in a very poor country with a whole bureaucracy around him that have gotten rich off oil revenues, trying to hang on to power and prepared to do deals with anyone.
Yeah. I was listening to a New York Times podcast. I know we attack New York Times podcasts, but I was listening to it. And they were talking about... they were sort of talking about why Mercado wasn't the person who was coming in.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Nobel Peace Prize winner, leader of the opposition. Why she wasn't being sworn in as the president. Instead, it's the vice president
of his party,
of Maduro's party, that's coming in. And they made the sort of true point, which is that Mercado does not have the support of the business elites and the government, the regime that runs the country.
The army.
And the thing that business leaders in the army want is stability to maximize the capacity to make profits and to ensure their own sort of political position. And so how can this ideologically right-wing person who has supported Trump deporting Venezuelans from America, she has, Trump was right when he said that she doesn't have the backing of the people. She doesn't have the confidence. Well, she doesn't have the confidence of the fucking elites. And so what America has done is, done a version of regime change where they get rid of the head but keep the body, which sort of shows again the fact that this is not some ideological sort of question. It's a question about domination, force, imperialism. Yeah.
Yeah, because and we don't know how it's going to play out, right? Like, I think it's quite likely they will incorporate parts of the opposition to kind of placate the West and kind of create the sense that there's a new kind of sheriff in town. But the army, which is the key player in any country like this, where civil society is very weak and so on. It didn't used to be like this, but that's where it is now because of the government. It's really just propped up with repression. They haven't budged, and they're very linked to the oil profits and oil revenues. And the big capital in Venezuela has made its money because the government had this scheme where they pegged the US currency internally. And so you could buy stuff from overseas at a pegged amount and then sell it internally for much higher. So you're making these huge amounts of profit. It was a very corrupt system, and the people who ran the system just got so rich. They called them the Boli bourgeoisie, as in Bolivarian. And so, yeah, these people are the main beneficiaries of the neoliberal turn that the government has taken. And by the way, like, sometimes there's a simplistic thing of like Chavez was good, Maduro was bad. Chavez was always a contradictory figure. He was not a socialist. He was not even really a kind of Democrat in spirit. He was an army figure who became radicalized in the late 90s, early 2000s, and did some good measures as a kind of progressive leader. But the whole thing was premised on really high oil prices, and those began to go down. And so the amount of money the regime had, or the government had to distribute among its supporters, became less, and so then austerity becomes to kick in. And then Maduro just accelerated that. And this is important because there's this idea on the left that imperialism is America and anti-imperialism is anyone who's against America. Whereas socialists are for the working class. Yeah. And that's in America, and that's in Venezuela, and that's in Iran, it's everywhere, And so we're against every government. There's no government of capitalist states that we're going to support. And we will always support workers who rise up against them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a good Substack piece. I don't know the person's name, but the Substack's called Red Mole. And they were sort of talking about the kind of phenomena that Omar's discussing here. And, you know, especially thinking about the Maduro regime, which, you know, even like, you know, in comparison to the Chavez regime, sort of, you know, one had 17 elections in the space of like 2 or 3 years.
No, 15 years or 10 years or something.
Oh, well, anyways.
A lot of elections.
Lots of elections.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other has obviously just totally taken out any sort of pretense of democracy. They falsified election results just a couple of years ago. But on the thing of this kind of what is imperialism, what is anti-imperialism, the author wrote, the lesson is not complicated. Anti-imperialism that serves a corrupt elite is not anti-imperialism. It's a negotiating tactic. When the price is right, they will sell. They always sell. The only defense against empire is an organized working class that cannot be sold because it is not for sale. And I think that's a really good sort of encapsulation of the kind of dynamics that we're talking about here.
Totally. And the parts of the left who want to defend these kind of regimes, like, I just think they're a cancer and they have nothing to offer us moving forward. Because if you think socialism is something like a dictatorship where unions are illegal, striking is banned, leftist organizations go to jail, then how can you inspire any sort of support among working class people? And even if you did, that would be a disaster. Like, that's not the kind of world we want. We want to expand democracy. The point of socialism is the bullshit voting you get to do once every 4 years into capitalism. We want to make that constant. We want to give working class people actual control over every economic, political, cultural, social decision that goes on, which is the total opposite of this kind of society. And so we have to be able to walk and chew gum. Yeah, we oppose American imperialism and we oppose the war in Iraq. Doesn't mean we have any support for these monsters who run these third world governments. And anyone who does can offer us nothing moving forward.
Yeah, totally. And like, this campist like approach to these things results in you supporting, you know, the repression, the killing of workers in places like Iran and Venezuela, and like the banning of homosexuality in Africa, and like that's not what we stand for. Like, sorry,
cracking down on the Hong Kong protesters,
totally
against like Chinese colonialism in Hong Kong. Like,
yeah, definitely. And I think we're going to talk about Iran after this, and I think we should come back to this question. So stay tuned for that. But I think just to, like, you know, round off this discussion about what's going on in Venezuela at the moment, I think it's clear that Trump is and his supporters and his regime are pushing a political new world order. You know, bringing back might is right. We have the right to do what we want. Stephen Miller is talking about the Western Hemisphere as America. This is just America, and this is ours. This is our backyard. Trump has said that we will, you know, we're going to do this again. Hegseth has said that they have the right to project their will.
Remain on notice. America can project our will anywhere, anytime.
So they're going to project their will anywhere, anytime. And so that means that ordinary people, you know, people here in Australia, we need to be prepared to push back against these imperial drives. We need to be ready to make the arguments that, you know, the working class has an interest against war. The reason why they want to go to war is to line their pockets, to improve their position of power. And that's why defending the Palestine movement is actually so central and so important, because the Palestine movement was an anti-war movement. It was the biggest anti-war movement that's happened in Australia for decades and decades and decades. So we need to...
that's why they hate it.
That's why they hate it. So we need to confront this political new world order that's being pushed by these fascists and, you know, build up anti-war working class movements in our town.
Which means socialist organizations ultimately, because everyone else believes in international law, you know, rules-based order, all that kind of rubbish.
We believe in the working class.
We believe in the working class, that's right, yeah.
It's nice and simple, actually.
Riding out the party line.
We're here with Bella Beiraghi. Bella is an Australian Iranian socialist who has been researching, writing, talking to people about the massive struggles that are going on in Iran at the moment.
Iran.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, that was a really useful contribution. So it's pretty incredible. There's been nearly 2 weeks of protests all across the country, people coming out on the streets, importantly on the university campuses and the workplaces. When Bella came in this morning, she was telling us that actually big strikes have started in a pretty conscious way connected to the protests. We wanted to get someone in who knows a bit more than us about Iran. So Bella, why don't you tell us a bit about what's going on, why the protests have started, what they're about, and what the whole situation looks like?
Yeah, well, protests in Iran were sparked about 11 days ago now in response to essentially the collapse of the Iranian rial, which is like the currency. And there's these merchants called like bazaris. They operate in like the city centers in Tehran, which is the capital. They essentially shut down their shops, took to the streets, and ignited what would become, an enduring nationwide rebellion. So thousands and thousands of people across many different cities, big towns, small regions, have been, coming out on the streets in solidarity, with one another, but also calling very quickly for the downfall of the regime, for death to the dictator, chanting things like Bisharaf, which means, shame, and that's sort of pointed toward all the, mullahs, the repressive security forces, and everyone that makes life hell for ordinary Iranians.
Yeah, I mean, just watching from afar, it's interesting. The bazaris are usually quite a conservative part of the of the society and were historically really linked to the regime.
Yeah.
So when I saw them coming out, you kind of know that something really important's happening, because they're very much the shock troops of order and stability in Iran. But yeah, like the fact that then spread beyond them is really significant, and like. There's so much problems in Iran, and we talked about Venezuela earlier, but like these are countries that yes are targeted by the West, but also the way they run is so corrupt, so capitalistic, so exploitative that conditions just grind down on people, and so yeah, like long-term living standards have been falling, the economy's falling, unemployment's rising. So people are just like really struggling to get by, and then these explosions have just been happening kind of every now and again.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it like follows a long-term sort of perpetual crisis really of Iranian capitalism. So there's, the thing of hyperinflation, but also just like a totally corrupt government with, oil tycoons, linked to the military that just go in, and totally like pillage the land, create, massive environmental destruction for their own profit. Meanwhile, ordinary working class people, it's something like nearly 70% of the population is living below the poverty line. Like this is just an incredibly dire situation. And I think that, that mixed with the sense of just like, this regime has no real political legitimacy amongst people. They don't, have a serious base of, support amongst like wider sections of society. That, means that the struggle in Iran can be quite explosive, and it has been sort of over the last decade.
Can you talk to us about the last decade? Like what's been going on?
A lot, pretty much. So I would sort of contextualize the last sort of decade of Iranian politics as just being mired by crisis at the top of society, the regime sort of flailing, not doing really well economically. The sanctions are a part of that, but also just, I think, internal, like domestic, policies and stuff feed into that. Has fueled sort of a rupture from below. So in like 2017, there was a general strike of, workers, and it was called like the Bread, Jobs and Freedom movement. And that, seriously sort of saw the working class, I think, come to the fore of sort of the struggle in Iran for the first time in a while, and particularly quite militant sections of workers. So there's like these sugarcane workers in the south of Iran, and the oil workers, I think particularly, started to actually form their own independent unions. Unions are illegal in Iran, so that was an important step for the working class to sort of actually fight back, form their own, organs of struggle. That sort of, I think, heightened the stakes with the regime.
And then more recently, there's been the women life freedom movement in Iran, which was pretty incredible to see, like young women, university students, high school students going into their schools, ripping down the portraits, of the Supreme Leader, tearing off their hijabs, cutting off their hair, and then being sort of joined in the struggle by, young men, old men, whatever. And sort of the question of sort of freedom for women being linked into and tied into those questions of just freedom and democracy, access to decent life. Do you want to talk to us more about the women life freedom movement?
Yeah. So it was the biggest uprising in Iran since the 1979 revolution, which saw the toppling of like a US-backed dictator, but then a massive counter-revolution that saw the regime that's in power today sort of come to life. So it was a serious rupture with the sort of regime in a bunch of different senses. So there was the militancy and I think like heroism of students and like young girls as well, school children who were very bravely defying the regime, chasing security forces out of their schools and stuff which is really awesome when they came in to repress them. But then also saw the sort of unification across ethnic and like religious divisions that the regime sort of has tried to use over many, many decades to divide and rule the population. So Jina Mahsa Amini, the woman who sparked the sort of uprising, she was murdered at the hands of Iran's morality police, this like disgusting, counter-revolutionary, institution that essentially polices, women, brutalizes them. She was a Kurdish woman as well. That really matters. Kurdish oppression is really, horrific in Iran. And her murder ignited a wave of rebellion. It lasted over 6 months from the capital in Tehran, which is majority Persian, bit more affluent, things like that, to the poorest provinces, so like Sistan, Baluchistan, and other ones like that. So I think that was really important as well, but there's so much more to say.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about Iran that's important for people to understand is that it's got a very sophisticated political life. And so the regime has like the kind of hardline, repressive approach, the kind of stick. And then it's also got these sort of so-called moderate reformers, friendly faces. And basically, my understanding is over the last 10 years, they kind of keep oscillating between the two. Every time there's a rebellion, they have to change tack. So if there's a hardliner in, they'll go with the softer one. If there's a softer one, they'll go with the hardliner. Because they don't really have a solution. They don't know they don't want to invest in, welfare in the economy to boost people's living standards. They don't have the money to do it because they're spending it all on imperialism, basically, on sponsoring their allies across the region. And so there's this constant crisis. And so the regime is sort of vacillating between the two things. But it seems like people are beginning to reject all of it. Is that right? Because the current leader, he's one of the sort of moderates. Is that correct?
Yeah, Pezeshkian, he, was sort of put in as kind of one of the last, like, relics, I guess, of the more reformist side of Iranian politics. Reformist also in this context, it doesn't really mean like handing down serious like reforms in terms of like the strengthening the welfare state and stuff, although it's like part of his sort of posturing, but it also is about a debate I think that goes on inside the ranks of the Iranian ruling class actually about how does Iran sort of pose on the international stage. Do you sort of try and integrate more with sort of international capitalism in the form of sort of deepening relations with the West in return for a sort of softening of the sort of hard edges of the Islamic Republic. And so Pezeshkian sort of traditionally hails from the more reformist, so the more sort of integrationist, I guess, posturing at least, aspects of the Islamic Republic. But I think that really his sort of election and stuff, it didn't signal a change in the core policies of the Iranian state.
Because to even be a candidate, you have to be approved by the supreme leader, right? So
very democratic.
So Iran has elections, and I think they're legitimate. I think
they actually are.
The voting part is legit, but to be a candidate, you have to be approved by the supreme leader, and so that's where the control comes, and that's where the filtering process takes place.
There's like the Iranian state is a huge bureaucracy. It's just a huge religious bureaucracy, and it has a lot of different parts, but yeah, there's essentially all of these different councils that are all appointed by one guy, the supreme leader of Iran, who control anyone that's able to partake in like official Iranian politics. So there's a parliament and stuff. It's not. It kind of is. It's a theocratic dictatorship in a lot of respects, but there is also some outlets of sort of parliamentary democracy, at least. And so partly Pezeshkian's win, I think, was a reflection of Iranians wanting, obviously, a more sort of pro-reform candidate, but also turnout was at a historic low, and people just don't really buy it.
Well, Bella, I've seen a lot of people online say that, well, Iran's been bombed by America, Israel's weakened them. It seems like a pretty opportune time for there to be, American intervention into Iran to topple the regime, and the people in the streets are just like idiot dupes of the American government. Is that true?
No, and it really tests my patience when people love to say that. I mean, for one, like the stakes of protesting in Iran, like no one is going to take to the streets in Iranian society, threatened with just live ammunition. Like, people have been 38 people have been executed on the streets of Iran so far over the course of the last 11 days. Over 2,000 people have been put in the regime's gulags and tortured. People would not be doing that because, Trump goes, hell yeah to the Iranian people, you've got to resist or that.
But it's the CIA, Bella.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, so sorry about that. But yeah, it's like, I think that in itself is just totally skirting the fact that like resistance and, rebellions and stuff often actually happen in the sort of in weaker countries, in countries that are sort of riddled with capitalist crisis, and that, even though the regime sort of postures as, like anti-America and stuff, like in practice, they have not lifted a finger to actually, be, act as some like anti-imperialist, state. I don't think that any state can truly be anti-imperialist, but even on their sort of terms, I think that, they don't have much to show for themselves at all.
These arguments are so despicable. I mean, they're really patronizing. Like nobody would say the No Kings marches were like orchestrated by Xi,
Exactly.
because
Or
it's like
Russia.
because it's Americans doing it, right? Like people in the West, when we protest, we're not being manipulated. We're just like we are. But then whenever something happens in some country in the global South or some country that's like oppositional to America, suddenly it's all just like America. America's pulling all the strings. All the people over there are just puppets. And it's like if they're pulling the strings, why did they wait till now? Like this government's been in since 1979, 1980. They've been opposed to it, like not all the time, but most of the time. Like, why did they wait till 2025? Like it's just ludicrous that the Americans are not all powerful. They don't control the world in this way. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems like that's a lot of different layers of society have been drawn into these protests. And I think it is really inspiring to see people take to the streets, as you've said, in really sort of dangerous conditions. People are being shot at with live ammunition by the Iranian government forces. So, maybe you could tell us, like, is there sort of some good examples that you've seen of like people taking to the streets, inspiring things happened? I mentioned at the beginning, there's been strikes taking place. Maybe sort of to round out the discussion, you could tell us a little bit about what the struggle looks like right now and where it's going.
Yeah, so there's sort of different social layers that are a part of the ongoing rebellion in Iran. I think that the students particularly have acted as sort of like a social detonator, where they weren't necessarily the first to launch into the struggle. That was actually the sort of more middle class elements, the bazaris, the traditional merchants. But very quickly, as protests, spread all across the country, the universities sort of became a battlefield between the regime and the students. So they, did massive sit-ins. They defied gender, segregation, which is actually a rule on university campuses. And I think it connects to the thing of like, women in Iranian society are second-class sort of citizens in, the law. However, they make up over half of university students and are among, they're in all spheres of sort of public life in a way that, say, like women in Afghanistan, like under the Taliban, are banned sort of from doing. And so it's that contradiction where you have, youth and women particularly who take a lead in social struggle and through that can ignite sort of more layers of society, including workers, that start to sort of go on strike, and they actually have started to go on strike in solidarity with the repression, particularly that the students sort of face.
And that happened in Women Life Freedom as well, right? Like people were being arrested, and then eventually, I can't remember the exact timeline, but people came out, like workers, oil workers, and said, like, we can't stand by while the women of this country are being persecuted. And so that's kind of an existing kind of relationship of kind of that inspiration and mobilization, starting with the students and the youth and then expanding out. What about the politics? Like one of the other critiques that comes from the West is like these, they're all America stooges or puppets. But then the other one is that they're pro-Western and want to go back to the Shah. And that's not, there is that tendency. But then there's obviously other tendencies. So can you give us a sense of like, what's the politics of the movement? What are their demands? What are the,
Yeah. Well, again, it's very mixed. So you have the sort of on the most radical edges, there are students and workers that have essentially created independent political organizations in the form of independent trade unions, but they sort of act as radical left organizations as well, who have consistently agitated for a couple of things. One, a class-based approach to taking on the regime, which I think is really important. So you have student unions that have signed on to statements, joint statements with some of the workers' unions, so the oil workers, the sugarcane workers, the teachers, the nurses, who have said that the way forward for our fight against the regime, yes, it's economic. Yes, we demand, our right to, live a decent life, our right to employment, our right to, be able to, buy essential goods, without sort of, losing our, livelihoods or whatever. But also our struggle it's a political struggle. It's all encompassing against the regime. And so we don't just sort of want to maintain sort of divisions between, well, there's the students over here and there's the workers over here and the shopkeepers over here, and we all have sort of different demands and are just doing our own things. They say, no, the strength that we have comes in our unity of organization with a specific argument that it's actually the working class in Iran with the economic power that can lead society against the regime in a more sort of serious, ongoing way.
And then what about that's really good to hear. And then what about, I guess, the Shah side of things, the pro-Shah kind of people, because they get a lot of airtime in the West.
They do.
Positively and then also negatively from all the Stalinists.
Yes.
fuckwits.
Yeah, definitely. When I was organising Women Life Freedom protests and stuff a couple of years ago in Melbourne, the Shah supporters in Australia that are Iranian, they just have a really good sort of PR network and stuff. So like, all the Western media outlets also just like love to report on them. So it means that there's a sense of, I think like hyper-inflated importance that the West gives them, although I do think that there's more Shah supporters outside of Iran than inside. It's hard to know, though, in terms of inside Iran, how many people want a return of the sort of, former US-backed dictator, or his son, who's alive now.
He's living in America, right, the son?
Yeah, he was living in Germany for a while. I think the German press particularly loved to wheel him out for their their programs and stuff. But yeah, there definitely is a base of support for sort of monarchist ideas. It's just hard to know how big that is, sort of speaking from far away. But there's also a lot of narratives to counter them as well, which I think are important in the movement. So particularly statements coming from some of the radical neighborhood committees that were formed in during the Woman Life Freedom movement, particularly of Kurdish women and other sort of ethnic minorities, who have put out really searing statements actually against the monarchists, saying, these are the people who say that, we're the alternative to the Islamic Republic, but they just want to reproduce the exact same oppression the exact same, forms of exploitation. And so our movement, is one that says, no to Western imperialism, no to, Western intervention and to Zionism as well that they mention, no to Israel, but also no to the so-called axis of resistance that they rightly, call out as such a faux sort of anti-imperialism that has, shown, that has sort of oppressed them for so many decades.
So where next for the struggle, Bella, and what needs to happen in Iran for the people to win?
Yes. Well...
Simple question.
Yeah, simple question.
Lay it out for
thanks
us.
for that.
5-point plan.
Yeah, 5-point plan. Maybe they should, just get me there or something. Fix everything. No, definitely not.
She's joking.
I'm joking. If anyone wants to quote me on that, no. I think more broadly, the way forward for the struggle in Iran is through the working class, coming to the fore, which they've, as Annika actually mentioned earlier, they've started to sort of do it's still in very early stages, but oil workers literally just today, this morning, posted a statement through one of their Telegram channels saying that they're preparing themselves for strikes against the regime because there's like 2 refineries in the south that are really important, really central to the Iranian economy that have already gone out on strike. They got attacked by the regime forces, and now there's more oil workers who are looking at that and saying, hang on, you're going to come after them, you're coming after us. So we actually need to consciously join this movement. And so I think, the sort of struggle against the Iranian, state and Iranian capitalism sort of more, broadly. It's not just this one regime. It's a whole entire, they're a part of a whole entire system of, capitalist exploitation and imperialist oppression. They, can only seriously be confronted in the longer term through the insurgency of the working class and through them overthrowing, Iranian, capitalism and showing the way forward for workers in the region.
Well, all power to the Iranian workers and students.
Definitely.
Riding out the party line.
Well, we've in this episode discussed both the imperial aggression in Venezuela, but then also the sort of confused Stalinist support for the Maduro regime, and then also the protests in Iran, and then the confused Stalinist arguments that the Iranian protests are a sort of invention of the CIA and the American government. It's like this idea that the American, government has the capacity to puppet master everybody, and that you have to support governments that are seen to be oppositional to America. So I think we should talk about that. Like campism is a sort of, term that gets thrown around. I think we've said it in the podcast. Like, what the fuck's campism? Why does it persist? Let's talk about that.
What is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. It comes from the Cold War, right? Because you had the West was the first camp, and then the East, or the USSR and its allies, were the second camp. And then I think it was Max Shachtman, who was an American Trotskyist before he became a terrible neoconservative. He coined the term third camp, which was neither side, but for the international working class. And that got taken up then by other Trotskyists around the world.
Yeah, they said like neither Washington nor Moscow, but the international working class.
That's right. Yeah, and so campism is a rejection of that. It's an idea that no, there's only 2 camps, and you've just got to pick one. And from their perspective, the obvious one is the one that's not America. And so that emerged during the Cold War period, and that was kind of justified initially by the fact that these countries were supposedly communist, which we'll talk about this one day, but they were not. And so at least you could say, well, they were defending what they thought was communism. When the Berlin Wall fell, and even before that actually, but when the Berlin Wall fell, there was no more, even proposed communism, purported communism. That was the end. So then these people had to face the question, well, we're still against American imperialism, but there's no socialism. So how do we justify our position? And so instead of saying, well, we support every, dictator who's against America just because we hate America, they started rationalizing these people as like structurally anti-imperialist, which was not because they were implementing any kind of progressive domestic policy or even international policy necessarily, but just because they were against America.
Yeah, they could be more right-wing than America, but yeah.
Yeah, like the Syrian regime was justified as anti-imperialist even though it massacred Palestinians, imprisoned them, tortured them, executed them. invaded Lebanon to stop a revolution there in the 1970s and 80s. Like, you know, these reaction regimes, the Iranian regime we just talked about, Russia at times has been supported by the campus, actually still is. Like, there's all these shocking, appalling...
Or like they talk about North Korea
Yeah.
as a positive example.
Yeah.
Look, North Korea.
Come on.
And so, you know, people know the Grey Zone, Mint Press, all these... There's a whole ecosystem online of sort of basically Russia-funded...
Or like Vijay Prashad, who's like a very popular media or like left-wing commentator, not media commentator, left-wing figure or whatever, who, literally has been funded by, you know, governments.
Definitely.
Like they just put forward these narratives that, you know, these countries are actually really progressive. They deserve our support.
I don't think there's anything left-wing about them. I think people don't... I think it's like a kind of... I'm not attacking you here, but like... I think when we include people like that on the left, we're doing ourselves a disservice.
Yeah,
like
agree.
being left-wing means being against... for the workers, against oppression, against, you know, capitalism in some way. These people support capitalism in these countries. They support regimes that are torturing and oppressing the working class. Their only claim to progressivism is that they're aligned with a bourgeoisie that's just anti-American bourgeoisie.
Yeah, totally.
It's like saying you're progressive if you support Pepsi over Coke or something. Like,
Yeah.
It doesn't make you left-wing. What makes
Exactly.
you left-wing is being for the working class.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, these are like supposed anti-imperialists that support imperialism as long as America's not doing it.
Yeah, like the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Totally.
Yeah.
They all say that's great. You know,
Totally
it's
justifiable.
all because of NATO.
Yeah.
So if NATO does something bad, then you can commit a genocide in response or whatever. That's fine. Like, this is just facile, pathetic logic. And actually, it attracts a certain type of person. Like, the type of people who really liked Stalin when he crushed, you know, opposition. That kind of macho, authoritarian personality type, which has nothing to do with left-wing traditions whatsoever.
Because I think we can, like, I think that there are obviously countries that are more powerful and less powerful, and countries that we need to oppose. So, for example, we live in the West. We live in, you know, the West, you know, defined ideologically or whatever. We're part of the America-Australia alliance. You know, our government supports America when it goes to war. So we have to be on the front foot against, you know, Western imperialism when it tries to do things like, you know, control Venezuela, you know, enact coups, you know, etc. That is really, really important to do. But I think it confuses and muddies the waters. Then if you then say, well, that means you have to support the governments that America is trying to depose for its own interests. There is weak imperialism and there's strong imperialism. There's small countries and there's big countries. But all of these governments are actually doing something that's against the interests of its own working class and of the international working class. And so we need to rebuild traditions of internationalism. Like that's what the neither Washington nor Moscow slogan was about. It was about an internationalist perspective that said the only camp here that can, like, you know, create a path forward for the mass of humanity is the working class. And so we have to be opposed to all governments, even if, you know, the main government that you should be, you know, fighting against is your own one.
Yeah, I was just reading a book about a miners' strike in America, in Arizona in the 80s, in 83, 84. These copper miners, anyway, Reaganism, it was a great battle.
Is it the Kingsolver book?
Yeah. It's all about women. Women basically ran this strike for like, I think over like a year or something. But anyway, they're saying in this strike, all these women are saying, it's like we've become Poland. And what they mean is they're like Solidarność against the USSR and the government, you know, like they're these workers, trade unions. So, you know, there are these possibilities for international linkages, you know. In 1968, when workers rose up in Prague, it inspired people in the West. It was sort of seen as part of the May 68 thing, the
or like
anti-Vietnam
that
War
beautiful
thing.
example of in 2011 when there was the uprising in Egypt in Tahrir Square. There was at the same time, I think it was teachers that went on strike in Wisconsin in America, and the Egyptian protesters ordered pizzas for the striking workers.
Yeah, and the
in
American ones were
Wisconsin.
holding signs saying, you know, walk like an Egyptian,
Yeah.
or strike like an Egyptian,
awesome.
stuff like that. Yeah, so, you know, there are these linkages. They can be built, but, you know, you got to fight for them. It requires left-wing politics. And nationalism, even the sort of left nationalism of the campus, goes against that. Because normal people are not going to side with these dictators. Like, working class people can instinctively see that, you know, people like Saddam Hussein, Bashar al-Assad, people prepared to butcher their populations are not the way forward.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you can win a kind of minority to anything, really, if you're aggressive enough. But in terms of winning over the majority of people and fighting for a world that's actually good, these politics are an absolute dead end. And it keeps coming up. You know, you would have thought, like I said, with the fall of the Berlin Wall, that this kind of stuff would be history. But it's actually growing again. And I think the internet has something to do with that, right?
Totally.
Because people are sort of young, they're kind of radicalizing or politicizing, and they don't know what to go. They go on the internet and they just find this rubbish, mostly from Americans, because again, America has always had the worst left, and it tends to dominate the internet. And so these Stalinist groups like the PSL in America, they put out a lot of content and it gets taken up and it corrupts these people. And so you have like young people in Sydney, I heard, at the Venezuela rally doing reading groups on Stalin, like Stalin's principles of Marxism.
Yeah.
Stalin was an absolute moron. He never wrote anything worthy of note. Like the guy, there's a reason why there's no books of Stalin that anyone would ever reference. But these young kids are like, we want to be anti-capitalist, and they just found this shit. And so it's this sort of like toxic residue from the 20th century that needs to be expunged.
Yeah, what's the quote about like we know theory was never your strong point? Do you
About Stalin.
Yeah.
But I believe you.
I think that's right. I mean, the other thing they said about him before he became like the grand leader was that he was as good as just a grey blur.
He was a grey blur.
He was a grey blur
in the background of the events of 1917.
But then people didn't get that he was going to be the butcher of the revolution.
Yeah, totally.
So, anyways, so I think I think it's useful to think about this question in the context of Iran and Venezuela, because actually there's important things here. We need to support the Iranian working class, the students, the oil workers, the sugar workers who are fighting for freedom, dignity, whatever. We have to support them. We can't say to them, well, you should actually just shelve your struggles because if you topple the government, that's going to be good for America. This is what that's what these people are asking of the Iranian working class, to just fucking take it.
Yeah, shut up.
It's very rich of you to say that from Australia or from America, but what about the fucking Iranian people who are, fighting for their lives, getting shot at?
Exactly. And the problem with this argument is when there are resistance movements in these places, in the global south, the oppressed, parts of the world, whatever, like if the left has this attitude, then no one from there is going to look to the left for inspirational guidance. And that's the thing in Syria. Like when I went to Syria, you meet all these people and they're like, oh, the Western left, they all support the government. And it's like, no, they don't all support the government, but like a lot of them did.
There's some loud idiots.
And so then the only people who seem to not do that are Islamists or whatever, or liberals. And so then people go down these two paths. Like either you become a pro-Western liberal or you become an Islamist. And they're both obviously disasters for any kind of uprising in these places. And so we need to build politics that can actually navigate. Yes, our main critique tends to be of imperialism in the West, rightly so, we live in the West. But then when actual uprisings and rebellions happen, we side with them. And we actually want to, to the extent we can, we're obviously very small, like we want to strengthen the radical socialist working class parts of those movements. And the only way to do that is to demonstrate and practice principled solidarity. So when the Syrian people rise up and the whole Western left says, don't rise up, you love your government, and actually, well, that just teaches them the left is poison.
Totally. And like, as to your point before where you're like, that's not really the left. Like these people are very online people generally, very loud, and they spend all of their time supporting, attacking the actual left over here, but also supporting repressive governments internationally. Like that's not left wing to do either of those things.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then so then that's in the context of Iran, and then why it's important in the context of Venezuela is because supporting governments like Iran or Maduro or whoever, this is not going to stop the imperial crisis that's coming for us with startling speed. Like we're gearing up for the next couple of decades to be increased imperialist conflict, war, deaths of working class people. And so we need to be able to build up the strength of our side to actually defeat imperialist governments, to stop war from happening. And so we have to be clear about who are our political enemies and who are our allies in these struggles. And we've said it a few times, but it's not governments, it's ordinary people.
Totally. And you never know, like, it's like the Hitler-Stalin pact. All these communists around the world thought they were on the anti-imperialist side and anti-fascist side. And then Hitler does a pact with Stalin, and suddenly they're on the pro-fascist side, you know? If you listen to read the lyrics of the song that this podcast is named after, you'll find a reference to that. So all the communists around the world suddenly started saying Hitler's actually really good, a peace, peace, merchant of peace, and it's all these evil British and French imperialists who are the imperialists. And then Hitler invades Russia, and then the Communist parties flip and say, actually, no, now Hitler is the imperialist, and the British and the French are the good guys. Like, this is not a way to do politics. You don't take your lead from capitalist governments anywhere. You take your lead from working class people.
And on that note, I think Omar has to go to the dentist.
Yep.
Bye.
I've got very bad teeth. Bye, guys.
Bye, Omar, but stick around.
Riding out the party line.
Okay, well, it's just me and Geordie here in the studio now. We had to get here at 8:30, which is hard for me and Jordan.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
We're not morning people.
No.
We had
or afternoon people. There's like a brief
people.
Window in the middle of the day.
If you want to get anything useful out of me and Geordie, call us at about, 11:30?
Yeah, between 11 and 3 probably.
But Omar just had to run for the train so that he could make his dentist appointment. So we're doing the outro without him. But it'd been a big episode. If you made it this far, well done.
Yeah, congrats. There's a lot going on. Sorry.
But yeah, I think because there is a lot going on, it does mean that, for left-wing people who are trying to navigate the world, we do have to talk about these issues and sort of find the thread. And I think, as people kind of get from this episode, the thread that we keep coming back to is the need for independent working class political activity, and working class struggle that actually is the answer to the problems that we face.
Yeah, and it always is. And if you want to, get involved with doing that, join the socialists in whichever state you are. Come along to the rally this Sunday.
This Sunday in Melbourne at midday at the State Library.
Yeah. Midday?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah, we're meeting at the Sunken Steps. What is it called?
The Sunken Library.
The Sunken Library outside the actual library. Yeah.
Yeah, so, join in with, Victorian socialists or socialists wherever you are. We're in every state and territory now. And if you're still listening and you're not yet a supporter of the podcast on our Patreon, please become a friend of the Party Line. It means that we can, continue to do this. We didn't have headphones for our guest.
No, it's quite embarrassing. So the volume's going to be fucked, I reckon. It's going to be too loud and too soft at the same time.
So if you don't want that to happen again, support us on the Party Line and share this with your friends so that more people can find out what the fuck's going on.
And if you're watching online, hopefully this room will look a bit nicer in a few episodes.
See ya.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.